Welcome to the Tackling Tech podcast, powered by Dyknow. Join us as we tackle all things EdTech with insightful interviews, actionable tips, and strategies that you can implement in your school or district to make technology integration more effective. Whether you're a teacher, a tech coach, or a technology administrator, we're giving you an advantage in your role by sharing stories from people who are passionate about working with their peers and enhancing the learning experience with technology. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Now let's tackle some tech.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Tackling Tech, a podcast that shares stories about how you can build better collaboration in K-12 schools, and a show that is dedicated to putting a voice to remote learning. I am Brett McGrath, Vice President of Marketing at Dyknow, and I always say this, but I'm excited for this conversation today. So I decided to tap my teammate, Tierra Leustig, on the shoulder and say, hey, let's have you on the podcast. Let's talk about what went on during Progressive Learning Week and the Progressive Learning Conference, and let's learn your key takeaways. So what I did, sat down right in the middle of the conference and recorded this conversation and just talked about all the things that she learned. And I think you'll get a little behind-the-scenes look at some of the key takeaways, the personalities that we worked with. And I thought this type of information, I think, will be super beneficial to your audience so you can gain some context and perspective for why we're doing what we're doing. Definitely hit that subscribe button if you like what you heard on Tackling Tech. Follow us across all social channels. Sit back and enjoy the conversation. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Tackling Tech. I'm excited about this one. It's a little different. We've done it before, but I have my teammate, partner in crime, Tierra, with us on the podcast today. Tierra, how are you doing?
Doing well. We're in the midst of Progressive Learning Week, so it's been a busy week, but we're getting through it.
Yes, it has been certainly a busy week, I think, from pushing out all the sessions, all of the content that's being shared in the conversations on social media, and all the engagement we have with the audience. It's been really fun to see it all come together. And the reason why I wanted to bring Tierra on instead of just the typical educator talk is that I think it's good for all of you to kind of understand what we're going through as we're building and developing content and why we're talking about things like progressive learning. So I guess first question over to you, Tierra, would be, what are some of the things just in putting this conference together that you've learned about progressive learning? And before you answer, I'll kind of set the stage where I think we, through conversations on the podcast, the YouTube show, just engaging with the market, we realized that the educators that were involved in different progressive learning styles were the ones that were ahead of the curve right now, and they were more on offense. So we gravitated to the themes of progressive learning and how blended learning worked and how people were using it and how STEM applied to certain situations. So those topics, I think we view as something that more people should know and understand. And so that's why we put the conference on, because we wanted to give everyone who we were talking to on a regular basis the opportunity to learn from some of the brightest minds in progressive learning in K-12. So that's kind of setting the stage. Tierra was the one wrangling everyone together and putting on these sessions. And I'm curious, just at the highest level, like what did you learn? What changed your mind about progressive learning as you were going through this?
Yeah, so I think just to talk about the event first, how we came up with it and how we put it together, I think that helps shed some light on what my takeaways have been. But with our events, we're always trying to be proactive and reactive. So being proactive, thinking about what educators are going to be thinking about in the months that we're hosting the conference, and then also being reactive from what we're hearing. So exactly what you talked about. What we were hearing from people was that these progressive learning styles like blended learning, flipped learning, STEM, all of the above are really shining through during this time of remote learning. And so when we were planning the conference, we didn't really know what the topic was going to be. And we had toyed with doing a blended learning conference. We had toyed with doing a flipped learning conference. And we said, why don't we just put them all together, bucket them as progressive learning, and help educators in September, go back to school with these progressive learning styles at the top of their minds. And I think my biggest takeaway from all of this is that, progressive learning styles, regardless of what you're doing, educators and teachers and students all have the tools to make each of these styles possible. They're not strategies that need, huge, expensive technology to make them happen, or a ton of education and professional development to, make a flipped learning strategy effective or make STEM effective in the classroom. But my biggest takeaway, and Chris Wood said this in his presentation, is that, every single teacher, regardless of what your expertise is in, can be a STEM teacher, and any student can be a STEM learner. So and we've seen that with remote learning as well. Every teacher can teach in a remote setting if they're given the tools to do so. So I think my biggest takeaway from this has been that progressive learning is driving K-12 education, but more importantly, educators are learning how to do progressive learning in a way that works with them, and not necessarily putting a bunch of time and energy into understanding what they are, but more being reactive in the sense of they've been thrown into doing blended learning, doing remote learning. They've been creating videos, and that in a sense is flipped learning, but they've been doing it unintentionally. So now I think we're trying to work backwards and say, okay, you've been instructing with videos. How can you put those into a more intentional lesson plan, put those into a more strategic, curriculum planning so that you can facilitate flipped learning. So I think everyone has had the tools to do progressive learning. It's just making them aware of how to do it more effectively.
Yeah, I love that. It's kind of the movement from people and educators just doing stuff in the physical, hybrid or remote setting, to there being a plan and organization around the stuff. And I think the stuff component is not a bad thing. No matter what you're going through in K-12, you always try new things and learn from those experiences. But I think what I hear you saying is that there is the stuff is working in pockets, and there's a movement happening, and as a movement is happening, and as people are on offense and being more proactive, then that gives the opportunity to design structure and plans which can impact the curriculum of schools across the country. And I think in talking with the people that we worked with on this conference, those are the types of themes we're hearing throughout. Is that something just you were hearing as you were engaging with kind of our presenters?
Yeah, definitely. And I think a big theme throughout everyone's presentation is, educators have really shined through during this time of remote learning and shown how flexible and how they're so adaptable. And the fact that many educators had to be thrown into remote learning in just a day or two, and they fully grasped new technology, grasped teaching with videos, things like that. I think having this break during the summer and then going back to school intentionally with remote learning is really impactful. And yeah, that rang true through all of our presentations and from all of our presenters, and just the sentiment that teachers are some of the hardest working people out there, and they've really, embraced all of these progressive learning styles to make learning most effective during unprecedented times.
You mentioned Chris Woods, who his brand to me is just the STEM guy. I think everybody on the internet knows him as the STEM guy. He puts himself out there, creates really compelling content. We've had him on the podcast. He's just always very, very active and passionate about STEM. I'm curious, maybe could you run through just the week that we had in terms of presentations, and maybe a nugget or two on those different learning styles that were talked about that was a takeaway from you after each of those presentations?
Yeah, so just a little nugget on Chris Woods. He shared, before we recorded his presentation, shared out a tweet of his. It was a picture of his slide deck for the presentation, and he had 120 slides on there, all of pictures of where he finds STEM in his daily life, and examples of STEM in movies and things like that. So he's great. He's super engaging. But yeah, I can give a recap of the week kind of from start to finish. So beginning of the week, we had Tara Martin. She did a keynote speech, and she was fantastic. We worked with her on the podcast before. You and she had a conversation about a lot of the stuff she talked about in her keynote presentation. But I think my biggest takeaway, her keynote was on her kind of idea of how to be real in education and teach from the heart. And I think my biggest takeaway from that was she shared a lot of her experience as a student and her, learning environment, and how hard it would have been for her to learn in a remote learning environment, given the circumstances that she grew up with. And I think that's something that really ties together and that we've heard with a lot of our conversations is students are now learning in an environment that is unnatural to them, and it brings about a lot of disparities and inequities that might be in their daily lives, but they're not going into the classroom to escape that. So I think teaching from the heart and taking that away from Tara's speech, we have to be empathetic and understand what students are going through. And same thing with teachers. I think it's just, we need to be understanding and empathetic of everyone during this time. And no one is in the same situation, but we all have this common kind of challenge that we've gone through together. So that was a great way to kick off the week. I think it really set the stage for a great week of presentations. And she kind of talked about, why we're doing this. And then we went into all of our presentations of how you can do that intentional instruction and really teach from the heart in the classroom. So on Monday, we had Tara. On Tuesday, we had our first recorded session with Jill Thompson. Jill works for Education Elements, and she was previously the director of personalized learning at Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools, which is a Dyknow customer. We've worked with them in the past, and she brought up our conversations with Jacob Standish, so it was great to connect with her again. But they work with the core four, so taking these 4 principles and applying it to how to personalize learning. She talked a lot about choice boards, about different tactics you can use in the classroom to personalize that learning for students and make it more impactful. And I think what I took away from that, which all kind of ties together with Tara's speech as well, is students all learn differently, and we need to really evaluate each student on an individualistic level, especially during this time of remote learning, because students who might be tactical learners and not audio or visual learners have a disadvantage during this time. So making sure we account for that and personalize learning in a way that, gives students choice boards and gives students different ways that they can complete the same assessments or tasks that they are doing during that class. So Jill's session was great. Tuesday was Jill. Wednesday was Chris Woods. We're recording this on Thursday, so Chris Woods was yesterday. Like I said, he had so many pictures of how he does STEM. I was talking to Maggie, one of our other teammates, and she said she was watching Chris's presentation. She thought his slide deck was a video because he was going through it so quickly. But he was sharing all of these different examples of where he finds STEM in his daily life. And I think what I took away from his, and we've talked with him in the past about this, but his mentality on STEM is something that in education is talked about as a very, maybe high level topic that educators need to invest a lot of money in technology or use fancy tools to make happen in the classroom. And there are these designated STEM classes, but Chris Woods' mentality is, STEM is everywhere. We can find it in our daily lives, and wherever you are, you can find STEM, create a lesson from it, and create a curriculum based off of that. So he shared a ton of examples. I was so intrigued by the presentation, and it was really engaging. We talked a bunch afterwards, and he shared, his favorite movie for STEM, which is Big Hero 6. So I think my biggest takeaway from that was just STEM is everywhere, and some of these more intimidating practices and instructional strategies that some teachers might shy away from really shouldn't be that intimidating. And regardless of what you're teaching, you can always integrate it into your lessons and into your classroom. So that was Wednesday with Chris Woods. Today, Thursday, Treefish EDU, that's Eric Geis, Kyle Nemus, and Nick Johnson. They did a session on flipped learning, and they recently launched a YouTube series called Flipped Flops, where they share kind of what mistakes they've made with doing flipped learning, and kind of how to combat those for other teachers who are implementing flipped learning. It was really engaging. Kyle takes one approach to flipped learning, which is flipping learning in the classroom, whereas Nick takes another approach, which is flipping learning outside of the classroom. So Kyle's approach is using videos to flip instruction in the classroom, whereas Nick talks about sending videos home with kids to do that learning outside of the classroom, do activities in the classroom. So Eric acted as kind of a mediator between the two, and they each shared their points for, why you should do each kind of flipped learning. My biggest takeaway from that, I think they shared a lot of ways that they failed doing flipped learning when they first started. And I think that was just a huge takeaway. I shared with them afterwards that the biggest way that I have been able to learn effectively is learning what not to do when trying to do something. So I think learning from others' mistakes kind of helps you fail forward with them. So they shared some great information. And then to close out the week on Friday, we had George Valenzuela. He had a great presentation on SEL, PBL, and equity, which I think is really timely given what's going on in our country and just the disparities that remote learning has shown, I think equity is a really important thing to focus on. And so George shared a lot of his insight and what he's seen working with schools with the equity divide and the digital divide. And so sharing how to combat that by focusing on SEL, focusing on helping students recognize how they're feeling and how to learn in that social emotional setting, and then also helping teachers bring that out of students and really facilitate that kind of learning. So I think we closed out the week the same way that we started it, which is focusing really on the whole child and on the challenges of this time and how to overcome them with teaching from the heart. So it was a great week. We can't wait for all of our chopped up sessions to go out so that people can get little bits of them without maybe having to watch the whole presentations.
Wow. Like if I were to hear that and I was listening in the audience and I had somewhat of curiosity or I was actively engaging in progressive learning programs, I would probably want to check this stuff out. It sounds pretty cool. And I think it is. And I have had a chance to check out most of the sessions, and I just, in my role as a marketer, it helps me learn so much and keep a pulse on the topics that really matter to K-12 educators. So I'm really excited about how the event came out, and definitely you got to go check us out. Those on all of our social channels. I talk about it all the time, YouTube, you name it. Like, this is where we publish all this great content. Tierra is the one who's publishing it out. So wanted to make sure she got the opportunity to talk about the conference because it was a hit and I was super excited about it. I think maybe if we close it out here, we have this dedication to progressive learning at Dyknow, and we want to be thoughtful and we want to help share information. We are starting a progressive learning partner program where we're sharing out new, latest and greatest information on a regular basis. If you want to be a part of that, definitely reach out to us. We'd love to share that curated content with you on a regular basis. We have updated our website to provide resources and resource centers for different progressive learning styles, so you can get access to the latest and greatest content that we're putting out on a regular basis. So progressive learning to us, it's simple. It's like we attach ourselves to student devices and help teachers with student monitoring. And you have to, in most cases, have student devices to power progressive learning programs. So they all go hand in hand, and that's really where we see our position. So we're not going to stop beating the drum just because the conference is over. We're going to continue to bring guests on Tackling Tech to talk about progressive learning, the good, bad, and the ugly, do events, do blog posts, you name it. So the content on the progressive learning side is not stopping anytime soon. I just want to close out with a question for you, Tierra. It is what, I guess, from your role and what you do at Dyknow and creating content and organizing content plans and strategy, what excites you the most about this kind of progressive learning movement, and what can people who follow us along and read our content regularly, what can they expect from us moving forward?
Yeah, I think what excites me the most is so many with this new age of progressive learning and the kind of remote learning still being a part of this, but people really applying those progressive learning styles to the classroom now. I'm excited because I think we're seeing a lot of educators who maybe before didn't think of themselves as, catalysts for certain learning styles, or maybe didn't think they were thought leaders. They've been engaging in these new PLNs and trying out new strategies and really sharing those out with people. So I think there are so many more educators now who want to share creative things that they've been doing in their classrooms, or, new technology strategies they've been doing, new tools they've been using. I think so many people, this has been a time of exploration for a lot of people. And so I think it'll be really great for us to have new conversations with educators who are excited about doing these new strategies and have discovered, maybe a new progressive learning style, an extension of something that we've talked about that they've then bridged off. So I'm excited for all the new conversations, new innovation that's happening. And I think also excited to see how Dyknow and the product, we can really attach ourselves to that progressive learning and see that come through from our customers in those conversations. So I think what people can expect from that content, we're consistently sharing out new conversations on all of our channels. And I think everyone can learn about what we're talking about in those conversations with people. I think we're always looking to expand the type of content content we produce. So keep an eye out for new channels and new ways that we're doing that. And I think it's really impactful. I've been thinking more about how we can lead with the learning style and support it with the conversations we're having rather than just reiterating the conversations, because I think the conversations that we're having are so impactful, but we want to really help people construct strategies off of the conversations, not just share what we're talking about. So I think keep an eye out we have a lot of great like infographics, doing more of that and sharing out real tactical ways that you can improve your strategies by using these progressive learning styles. And then as technology grows in your district, learning how you can support that with student device monitoring like Dyknow and what we support, and then support that with all of our professional development opportunities. And like we said, we always have new events coming. So we'll have a new event sometime soon. That's not top of mind right now, but we'll be having a new event launch with whatever progressive learning style is top of mind in the next couple months.
Absolutely. Another just shout out. I will say that if you check out our events, we do offer PD credit that you can go get sign off for. So that's something that people who have been attending our events really, really like. And also we had a little discount on the Dyknow product for people who attended this last event. So just some teasers, just in case you were wondering about our events, that it's not just about the content. Well, the content is the most important thing. We also like to give back a little bit. So definitely go check out our content. We're going to continue to be talking about events and everything else we're doing on Tackling Tech. Tierra, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
I got to shout out to Tierra for this, but she put in so much work and energy to make this conference happen. So I'm glad she got a chance to share her perspective with all of you. Definitely hit that subscribe button if you like what you heard. Tell a friend. We love that. Go share with another teacher or tech director that you're listening to the Tackling Tech podcast and you're gaining value. We appreciate that. Word of mouth as marketers, that is so important to us. Take care of yourself, take care of others around you, and we'll talk to you real soon.